Small town, big lives. Nestled in the heartland of America, Willow Creek was the kind of town people often drove through on their way to somewhere else. Maple trees lined its main street, their crimson and gold leaves setting the town aglow each autumn. Every porch seemed to hold a rocking chair, and on college football Saturdays, the local diner would buzz with the latest gossip, half-empty mugs of coffee warming the hands of regulars who knew each other's stories by heart. It was here, surrounded by cornfields, in a sky that stretched endlessly west, that Lily and Jack built what outsiders thought was an all-American dream. Their modest white house stood at the end of a quiet lane, where children felt safe, playing late into summer evenings, and neighbors looked out for each other. Lily, a gentle soul with determined eyes, quickly became part of Willow Creek's patchwork. She volunteered at the library, baked pies for the church fair, and was always the first to lend a hand when a neighbor was down on their luck. For years, Lily's world revolved around simple joys. She cherished family breakfasts as sunlight spilled into their cozy kitchen, and found contentment planting sunflowers along the weathered fence with her daughter. On weekends, she and Jack would stroll through the farmer's market, fingers intertwined, greeting familiar faces. The town itself breathed a sense of comfort. Life moved at its own slow, measured pace, and people here prided themselves on knowing their roots. But for all its surface tranquility, Willow Creek, like any small town, held its secrets. Whispers gathered in the corners of grocery stores and behind church pews. Invisible threads weaving stories together, sometimes with kindness, sometimes with suspicion. Beneath that canopy of maple leaves, everyone carried their own burdens and dreams, and Lily was no exception. She believed her love and hard work would lay the foundation for a happy family, never imagining how quickly the ground could shift beneath her feet. In Willow Creek, one story never truly stayed private. Surrounded by rolling fields and neighbors who notice everything, even the smallest joys and heartbreaks echoed through the community. And for Lily, the town she once saw as a safe haven would soon become the backdrop for the hardest chapter of her life. A rainy day and his departure. The memory of that rainy afternoon lingered with Lily long after the echoes of thunder had faded. The sky, swollen with thick gray clouds, pressed low over Willow Creek, drenching rooftops and slicking the empty streets in shimmering puddles. Rain tapped a frantic, uneven rhythm on the windows as Lily moved quietly through the house, folding laundry in the living room, while her daughter colored beside her on the rag rug. It was on days like this, when the world felt simultaneously cozy and closed in, that Lily most cherished the sense of family and belonging she had worked so hard to nurture. But that day, the warmth was shattered in an instant. Jack came home early, but instead of greeting them with his usual crooked grin, his shoulders were tense, his expression unreadable. He didn't sit or offer a word of comfort as their daughter greeted him. Instead, the room filled with an unspoken heaviness as he started packing his suitcase, grabbing shirts and ties in awkward handfuls. Lily's heart clenched as realization dawned. Words tumbled out, questions, pleas, disbelief. But Jack wouldn't meet her eyes. In halting phrases, he admitted what had seemed unthinkable. There was someone else, and he was leaving. Tonight, for good. The ache in Lily's chest was sharp and immediate, her mind whirling with the impossibility of it all. Outside, wind lashed against the siding, as if mirroring her turmoil. As Jack pulled the front door closed behind him, his footsteps muffled by the rain, it felt like the walls of their house had shrunk 3 sizes smaller. The silence was different now, not peaceful, but hollow. Lily's daughter, too young to understand the weight of what had happened, looked up at her mother, confusion and fear flickering in her wide eyes. Almost at once, news began to trickle through Willow Creek. Small-town secrets rarely lasted longer than it took for someone to finish a cup of coffee. Neighbors exchanged glances as Lily went about her errands, and old friends hesitated before offering awkward words of sympathy. With Jack gone, and the truth of his betrayal exposed, Lily found herself not only abandoned by her husband, but thrust into the uncertain center of community gossip. That stormy day marked the beginning of a season of loss and loneliness for Lily. The rain eventually stopped, and the world outside grew green and fresh again. But within her heart, a stubborn ache remained. It was the day innocence left their home. The day Lily was forced to face a new reality as a single mother, alone with her grief and the enormous task of rebuilding her family from the ground up, defeat and loss. In the weeks that followed Jack's departure, Lily discovered loneliness had many faces. Some days, it looked like an empty chair at breakfast. Other days, it sounded like hushed conversations that suddenly stilled when she entered the grocery store. But the heaviest blow was yet to come, and it would arrive not as whispers, but as actions from those she once called family. At first, Lily had clung to the hope that Jack's absence was only temporary, that perhaps guilt or common sense would steer him back home. Those hopes faded quickly. Soon after, Jack's family, who had always been polite, if distant, grew cold and unrecognizable. Visits that used to end with warm hugs were now replaced by curt exchanges and closed doors. Any pretense of courtesy dissolved into calculated distance. The true heartbreak set in when matters of property and inheritance surfaced. Jack's family, armed with lawyers and old resentments, moved swiftly. Documents appeared. Paperwork Lily didn't fully understand. Forms demanding signatures. Legalese stitched together with an unmistakable intent. Before she could grasp what was happening, accounts were emptied, her name erased from deeds, and rights to the house, quietly but firmly, transferred away. Through it all, Lily tried to stay strong for her daughter, but there was only so much dignity one could salvage while packing childhood toys and heirloom photo frames into brown cardboard boxes. With every object she wrapped, she mourned more than lost furniture or neighborhood memories. She grieved the security she'd promised her child, the continuity she desperately wanted to protect. Leaving the house at the end of Maple Avenue felt like a surrender. It was more than bricks and wood. It was where her daughter took her first steps, where Jack once fixed squeaky windows on Sunday mornings, where laughter and lullabies lingered in each corner. Now, she and her daughter stood at the curb as the moving van pulled away. The front porch bathed in late afternoon sun, knowing they'd never return. For Lily, defeat was not just about losing a home or financial comfort. It was about being stripped of belonging. The small town she once loved began to feel like a landscape of obstacles. With no family to turn to and no nest egg as a safety net, every new day required summoning a kind of strength she never asked to possess. Yet, as night fell on that first evening in a bare, unfamiliar apartment, Lily promised her daughter and herself that the story would not end in loss. The pain was real, but so was her resolve to persevere. Rising from the ashes, the first night in the apartment was a jumble of exhaustion and restless sorrow. The air was tinged with the unfamiliar. New paint, unsoftened carpets, and distant sounds from neighbors Lily didn't know. Her daughter clung to her, confused but brave, fighting sleep as if afraid this new place would swallow the remnants of their old world while she dreamed. Lily tiptoed through the dim rooms, replaying the day's events, every memory of packing, leaving, and silent tears stung like a fresh bruise. She promised her daughter everything would be okay, but the hollow ache in her own chest whispered doubts she barely dared admit. As her daughter finally slipped into uneasy sleep, Lily stared out the window at the shimmering streetlights, at the unfamiliar skyline. She understood that survival meant more than mere endurance. From now on, she would have to rebuild from nothing. The weight of new beginnings. Mornings became a test of willpower. The luxury of slow routines was gone. There were bills to pay, groceries to buy, and a job to find. Some mornings, Lily's hands trembled as she packed her daughter's homemade lunch, braiding her hair and brushing away questions with a smile that felt rehearsed. She hunted for jobs with single-minded urgency, knowing that pride now had little place in her vocabulary. Her first break came at a corner cafe, a modest place run by a kind-hearted but harried woman who understood quietly what it meant to start over. Lily worked the early shifts, pouring coffee, wiping tables, and learning the rhythms of hungry commuters and sleepy regulars. Every dollar mattered. Each tip was counted twice. After her morning shift, she'd pick her daughter up from school, navigating playground politics and the silent curiosity of other parents. A few remembered her family from church potlucks and picnics in the park. Some extended awkward sympathy, while most simply watched, as if waiting to see if she would falter. Lily held her head high, determined not to let pity dictate her narrative. Small victories. The apartment, sparse at first, transformed in small ways under Lily's careful hands. She thrifted curtains in cheerful patterns, repurposed old mason jars as vases, and let her daughter choose bright bedding for their shared room. Bit by bit, the space hinted at coziness, and each weekend, Lily tackled a new project, hanging up pictures, planting herbs on the cramped balcony, making cinnamon rolls from scratch like she used to. With each improvement, optimism returned, fragile but real. Her daughter began to adjust, too, making friends at school, laughing at simple TV shows, and filling their new home with crayon drawings. On sticky notes taped to the fridge, Lily wrote daily messages. "You are brave. We are strong. Tomorrow will be better." She wasn't sure who needed the reminders more. Weathering the hard days. Not every day was a victory. Some nights, fatigue and loneliness would ambush Lily. The weight of responsibility pressed heavy on her shoulders. There were days when nothing seemed to go right. A missed school bus, a spilled cup of milk, a rude comment from a coworker. Sometimes, the pain of betrayal would flare up unexpectedly. A song on the radio, a glimpse of their old street, or seeing Jack's family at the grocery store avoiding her gaze. She learned to let herself grieve, sometimes quietly after her daughter was tucked in, sometimes not so quietly behind the closed door of the tiny bathroom, tears muffled by a towel. But as the calendar days ticked by, those moments became less paralyzing. Lily realized she was tougher than she looked. She still missed the security and the certainty of her former life, but she no longer waited for rescue or for things to return to the way they were. Hustle and hope. When cafe hours weren't enough, Lily took on side gigs, stocking shelves at a grocery store 2 nights a week, then cleaning offices for a tiny agency that paid in cash. She set up a routine: early mornings at the cafe, afternoons with her daughter, Evenings spent scrubbing desks under flickering fluorescent lights. On weekends, she would bake muffins to sell at the local farmers market, using recipes handed down from her grandmother. Exhaustion was constant, but so was an odd sense of accomplishment. Every paycheck, every little milestone, no penalty charges on her rent, enough groceries for the week, a smiling daughter, was a testament to her grit. Friends, few but fiercely loyal, formed her quiet support system. They checked in, dropped off casseroles or hand-me-down coats, and watched her daughter while Lily squeezed in overtime shifts. She learned to accept help, to say yes without shame, rediscovering herself. With pain came unexpected growth. As months passed and the routines of survival solidified, Lily unearthed fragments of herself she'd forgotten. She started reading again, library paperbacks and borrowed magazines, finding comfort and distraction in stories. She enrolled in night classes at the community college, studying business administration in hopes of climbing out of the cycle of minimum wage jobs. Balancing it all was dizzying, but every assignment completed and every test passed fueled her belief in a future worth fighting for. Lily also began rediscovering her joy. She painted with her daughter on Saturday afternoons, their laughter echoing in the kitchen. She joined a book club at the library, tentatively sharing her thoughts and forming new friendships. On weekends, she'd take her daughter for long walks along Willow Creek's leafy trails, teaching her to notice wildflowers and hidden birds' nests. Each new adventure, however small, became a declaration that their life, while battered, was not broken. Quiet triumphs. Over time, signs of progress accumulated. Lily saved enough to replace their broken TV, and one Christmas managed to buy her daughter a used bicycle, the exact shade of purple she'd dreamed of. She started to sleep more easily, no longer listening for every creak of the floorboards, no longer haunted nightly by what she'd lost. The town, once a web of judgment and gossip, began to change as well. Some neighbors warmed up, stopping to chat at the mailbox or offering homemade cookies. Lily saw herself less as a victim and more as a survivor, someone who, though forced down, had stood up again and again. Not all relationships healed, but Lily found peace with the ones that mattered, with her daughter's giggle, with her own reflection in the mirror, and with the memory of the love she had given. Resilience restored one clear spring morning, almost a year after they moved in. Lily found herself sitting on their small balcony, sipping instant coffee, watching her daughter ride that purple bike in circles below. Sunlight glinted off the sidewalk. The air was sweet, with the promise of things blooming. For the first time in what felt like forever, Lily realized she wasn't just surviving, she was living. Hardship still loomed on the horizon. Uncertainty would always shadow single mothers like her. But she had discovered something fundamental in the struggle, that every heartbreak, every night of doubt, had forced her to be stronger, kinder, more determined. Hers was no longer a story defined by loss. It was a story of rising, of building something beautiful from the ruins, of hope stitched together from every small victory. And deep down, Lily knew she wasn't alone. Across Willow Creek, across the entire country, other women like her were piecing together better futures out of broken pasts. Her journey, messy, unglamorous, remarkably brave, was, in its own way, a quiet American triumph. Light at the end of the road time has a way of blending pain with determination, shaping raw wounds into something sharper, an urge to change the narrative, to seek justice, or at least closure. For months, Lily's life was consumed by routine and responsibility, but the memories of her home, her marriage, and the way she'd been forced out, humiliated, robbed of security, never faded. In quiet moments, the questions gnawed at her. How could it be fair? How could the law and the town allow such injustice to quietly? Every evening, after working 2 jobs and helping her daughter with homework, Lily would sit at the kitchen table, sorting through boxes of paperwork she had managed to rescue from the move. There were old bank statements, copies of legal documents she'd never truly understood, tax forms signed in Jack's looping handwriting, and brittle, yellowed envelopes dating back to when life was simpler. The discovery one, unremarkable. Tuesday, while searching for her daughter's immunization records for the new school, Lily stumbled on something unexpected. Wedged between a stack of utility bills was a file she didn't recognize. Its label faded, but legible. Home and assets. Flipping it open, careful not to spill the contents, Lily's breath caught. Inside were several documents: marital agreements, insurance policies, and most surprisingly, deeds and statements that contradicted the claims Jack and his family had used to force her out. She noticed signatures that didn't match her own, dates that raised questions, and typed addendums she had never seen. Evidence, scruffy but damning, suggesting the transfer of the house and assets may have been a coordinated manipulation. Heart pounding. Lily lined up the paperwork in chronological order, checking watermarks, tracing signatures with a fingertip. The pieces began to fit. A sloppily covered trail of deceit, and perhaps even forged consent. She remembered the confusion and pressure of signing documents she barely understood, with her in-laws insisting, "It's just legal stuff. It's for tax purposes." Now, looking back, a slow anger replaced her old helplessness, seeking answers. For weeks, the folder became her secret. She researched late into the night, borrowing community library books about property law, divorce settlements, and inheritance rights. She took notes in the margins, learning far more about legal fine print than she'd ever intended. Google searches became second nature, and she visited the county records office to cross-verify property transactions. Quietly, determined not to draw town gossip or tip off Jack's family, Lily finally confided in Maria, her closest friend from the cafe, who brought her the number of a lawyer in the nearest city, someone with a reputation for fierce advocacy and a soft spot for underdogs. The first phone call was shaky, her voice caught, unsure, embarrassed, but the attorney listened patiently, asked for scans of the evidence, and finally said, "You may have a real case, Lily. You just might." The decision. With this fragile hope, Lily faced her hardest questions. Seeking justice would mean confrontation. Public, painful, and likely ugly. Jack and his family were prominent in Willow Creek, their reputation as upstanding citizens bolstered by years of donations to charity auctions and church remodels. The community's sympathy for Lily had always been polite, but guarded, laced with, "Maybe there's more to the story," undertones. To fight back was to risk renewed gossip, social isolation, and the possibility of losing, again, in an arena she barely understood. Worse still, Lily feared how it might affect her daughter. Their life, newly stable, was still fragile. There would be whispers at school. There might be backlash she couldn't shield the little girl from. Would it be braver to endure in silence, or to risk everything for what was right? Sleep would not come easily during these weeks. Lily replayed the humiliation of losing everything, the despair in her daughter's eyes, the way she had promised, "Mommy will keep you safe." She woke before dawn, standing at their kitchen window, clutching a mug of coffee, watching the sky turn from charcoal to navy to pink, every color urging her into clarity. Gathering strength, Lily's first real step was to meet with a lawyer in the city. She brought her daughter, who colored quietly in the lobby while they went through every page, every signature, date, and discrepancy. The attorney explained the process in practical terms: what it would cost, what evidence they needed, what battles to expect. The odds, she admitted, weren't great. Rural courthouses could be unpredictable, and Jack's family had resources and influence. But their case was strong, and the truth was solid enough to build on. It felt strange, sitting across a polished conference table, speaking words like fraud, property rights, legal recourse. Lily, who once never questioned a notary's stamp or handshake, was now piecing together her own defense. As the weeks turned into months, she worked extra cafe shifts to pay consultation fees, coordinated strategy meetings during break times, and leaned on Maria and 2 other friends from her book club for logistical help and emotional support. The turning tide, when the legal action finally became public, it sent quiet ripples through Willow Creek. People talked at the pharmacy, at the school gates, and in the pews after Sunday service. Some neighbors withdrew, wary of conflict. Others, less invested in the town's old networks, sent small gestures of solidarity: a casserole, a handwritten note, an offer to babysit. There were uncomfortable run-ins at the grocery store, but Lily was done hiding. She met stares with calm, answered questions with honesty, and refused to back down. Jack's family responded with predictable hostility, refuting the claims, threatening costly counter-lawsuits, and spreading rumors about Lily's supposed motives. But this time, documents spoke louder than hearsay. The attorney's patience and Lily's meticulous record-keeping brought cracks to the well-kept facade. Court dates came and went like slow-moving thunderstorms. Sometimes Lily left hopeful, sometimes convinced the world was stacked against her. Her daughter, growing older and more perceptive, sensed the tension, but also her mother's quiet strength. Nights spent reviewing legal briefs were balanced by Sunday mornings at the park, baking cookies and sharing stories rooted in hope rather than fear. Breaking through. After what felt like an eternity, they reached a turning point. The judge, reserved but fair, noted clear inconsistencies and ordered an investigation into the property transfer. Jack's family, finally facing scrutiny, began to unravel. Within months, a settlement was proposed: restitution of Lily's original share of the house, repayment for certain assets, and a formal acknowledgement, if not a public one, that wrong had been done. It was not perfect justice. No judge could restore the lost years, the unmended trust, or the innocence both Lily and her daughter had forfeited. But it was recognition. It was dignity. It was the world, however briefly, saying, "We see you. What happened wasn't right." Moving forward in light, with the settlement, Lily put a down payment on a modest 2-bedroom house at the edge of town. There was no grand homecoming, no parade, just a quiet move, new keys placed in a calloused palm, and the slow, careful rebuilding that true healing requires. The experience left scars, yet it also lit a small, enduring flame. Lily volunteered again at the library, not because she had to, but because she wanted other women to know there was a path through even the darkest woods. She became the friend who stayed late, the neighbor who remembered birthdays, the parent whose voice was unwavering at the PTA. For her daughter, the message was even more profound. In a world that may bend, but for mothers who stand tall, the light is never out of reach. Justice had not come easily, but it had come, threaded through the courage found in a single box of old papers, the loyalty of a few allies, and the invincible will of a mother fighting for what's rightfully hers. For the first time in many years, Lily allowed herself to imagine a future defined not by what she had lost, but by what she had reclaimed. At last, on the well-worn streets of Willow Creek, she was once again the author of her story, walking in sunlight she'd fought so long to find. The fateful choice. Some decisions are made in a single moment, blinding in their clarity, impossible to turn away from. Others are forged slowly, weighted with complexity, sharpened by sleepless nights, and shaped by every look, word, and silence that surrounds them. For Lily, the choice that lay before her was not just about reclaiming her home or her pride. It was about the legacy she would leave for her daughter, and about whether fear or hope would win out. The crossroads. After months of legal battles, community whisperings, and facing down Jack's family in courtrooms and at the local grocery store, Lily found herself at a crossroads. The settlement offer sat on her kitchen table, next to her daughter's colored pencils and a cup of barely sipped tea. It wasn't perfect, and it wasn't justice. It was a compromise, one that might finally end the nightmares, the gossip, and the cold stares, if only she were willing to let go of the fight. But surrendering meant allowing her story to be rewritten by others' hands. It meant agreeing that what happened was just one of those things, an unfortunate outcome to be sighed over, then brushed aside, as if the betrayal and stolen security could be repaid in a check or deed. The other path, the one involving a public trial and the risk of ugly revelations, promised uncertainty, more hardship, and the potential loss of everything she'd painstakingly rebuilt. Lily stood at the window that night, watching as the town's streetlights flickered on and the wind rattled the glass. She could see the outline of the new house she'd just moved into. Small, sturdy, a place where she and her daughter could finally sleep without looking over their shoulders. Yet, she knew that comfort rested on a fault line of unspoken questions and the unresolved wounds that only she could address. The weight of community judgment. In Willow Creek, no one was truly anonymous. Neighbors watched with a mix of sympathy and skepticism. Since Jack's family was entrenched in the local church and business council, Lily's every move was parsed. She heard the comments, both whispered and disguised as backhanded sympathy. It's best to let it go, for her daughter's sake. The community's eyes weighed heavily on her, making every trip to the market or church an act of courage. Teachers noticed her daughter's silences and the way she sometimes shrank from questions about her father. Friends, now fewer but truer, offered help, but also quiet concern. Was Lily's fight for justice inspiring, or was it exposing her child to more pain? She grappled with guilt. Every instinct as a mother told her to shield her daughter from rumors, from anger, from the ugly realities of litigation. Yet another voice, quieter but more persistent, asked what example she set by backing down. Was dignity found in silence or in the willingness to speak difficult truths? Wrestling with doubt nights became battlegrounds of thought. In her bedroom, while her daughter slept clutching a well-worn stuffed rabbit, Lily would pace or sit at her desk, reading the lawyer's updates and community messages. She remembered her parents' old advice. In small towns, reputation is everything. But reputation hadn't saved her from injustice. It had, in some ways, enabled it. She thought about the women she'd met through her support group and book club. Single mothers, widows, neighbors who'd endured their own quiet heartbreaks. Some had walked away, choosing peace at any cost. Others, she realized, still wore the scars of choices made for them by husbands, laws, or circumstance. Every story weighed on her as she considered her own. Was she fighting for herself or for everyone who'd ever been told to keep quiet and move on? Some mornings, Lily caught herself staring into the mirror, searching her own eyes for signs of resolve or of exhaustion. Was she being stubborn? Was she sacrificing her child's well-being for a matter of principle? Or was she teaching her daughter something sacred about self-respect and the true meaning of home? A daughter's perspective. Through it all, Lily's daughter was both witness and participant in the unfolding drama. As she grew, her questions grew sharper. Why did Daddy leave? Why do people stare? Are we safe here? Lily answered as honestly as she could, balancing protection with truth, never hiding her tears, but also never letting them be the end of any conversation. One evening, after a particularly challenging day in court, Lily found her daughter drawing at the kitchen table. The picture was simple: a house, a garden, a mother and child holding hands beneath a blue sky. But in the corner were dark scribbles, rain clouds with faces, their frowns unmistakable. Without a word, Lily leaned down and hugged her daughter fiercely. That picture became her touchstone, a reminder that children feel what adults only dare to name, and that honesty, even when painful, can plant the seeds of courage. The decision. Finally, the day came when Lily had to choose. The lawyer needed an answer. The community waited, some with hope, others with impatience. After dropping her daughter off at school, Lily drove out of town, parking at the edge of a pond where wild geese gathered. She sat for hours, breathing in the cold, damp air, the world stripped down and honest in late autumn's raw light. Here, away from her daughter's uncertain eyes, the lawyer's logic, and the town's expectations, Lily let the truth rise within her. She loved her daughter fiercely, and every sacrifice she made was for the child's future. Yet she also owed herself, and every woman like her, an unwavering honesty. Healing, she realized, wasn't won by erasing the past, but by standing in the light of truth, no matter how blinding it seemed. When she returned to the apartment, she called her lawyer, her voice clear and steady. She would continue, no settling for silence or convenience. Win or lose, she wanted the court record to reflect the truth of what had happened. She wanted her daughter to remember not just the fear and instability, but the moment her mother chose conviction over comfort. Choosing courage word spread quickly in Willow Creek. For better or for worse, Lily would face the risk, the renewed gossip, the painful testimonies, the uncertain outcome. But friends who saw her resolve brought food, watched her daughter, or simply sat with her in the long evenings before court. Even strangers began to reach out. Notes, silent nods at PTA meetings, a hand squeezed at the grocery checkout. The forces against her were real, but so was the growing circle of those silently wishing her strength. In the days that followed, Lily and her daughter found new rituals. Each morning, they recited words of affirmation. Each weekend, they lit a candle for hope. They laughed, cried, and shared stories, knitting their lives together with something stronger than fear. Faith in each other and in the importance of a voice raised, unafraid, for what is right. Lily's choice became her legacy. No matter how the final chapter ended, she walked forward knowing that fate, though merciless at times, could also be shaped by fierce love, by community, and by the simple but profound refusal to let others decide the meaning of her life. In that choice, at last, she found peace, the courageous mother, and a new beginning. The day the judge's decision was finalized, Lily sat on the worn steps outside her new porch, taking in the evening air. There was no fanfare, no dramatic applause, just the faint sound of cicadas and the breeze rustling through the maples at the edge of her yard. Her daughter was inside, humming to herself as she colored, content in a way Lily hadn't seen since those long-ago days before loss and upheaval. For a brief moment, a rare quiet settled over Lily. It was the peace of knowing that, though bruised and changed, she had emerged from the storm not defeated, but transformed. The wounds that forged strength. In the weeks and months that followed, the wounds Lily carried, betrayal, displacement, days spent standing firm in court, did not instantly vanish. There were nights haunted by anxiety and old memories, the tap of Jack's boots in the hallway, the echo of her own words, pleading for the past to hold steady. But as the seasons shifted, so did Lily's sense of herself and her place in the world. What she had once viewed as defeat became, in time, evidence of strength earned the hard way. She had learned to navigate a system stacked against women like her. She'd faced down shame and whispers and stood unflinching in front of those who doubted her resolve. With every box she had unpacked in her small new home, with every job shift completed and every check deposited, she was laying another brick in the foundation of her newly claimed future. New patterns of living. Lily established gentle routines that offered stability. Mornings started with laughter over lopsided pancakes, the kitchen golden in the early sunlight. Together, she and her daughter walked or biked to school, sometimes hand in hand, sometimes racing to see who could reach the next mailbox first. Passing neighbors would wave, some with genuine warmth, others still cautious or curious. But Lily smiled back regardless. She had nothing to hide anymore, and that simple truth felt more valuable than any social acceptance. She returned to volunteer at the library, this time not from a sense of obligation, but out of gratitude for quiet spaces and second chances. She helped organize children's readings and even started a support group for single mothers discovering life after loss. Some evenings, the house was filled with voices, women swapping stories, while children built forts from sofa cushions and battered quilts. Lily found herself comforted and emboldened by this new network of friends, a fellowship born out of shared scars and mutual encouragement. Growth for herself and her daughter. For Lily's daughter, the aftermath of turmoil grew less frightening as routine and reassurance took hold. She thrived in the new school's art room and brought home drawings of their house with bright windows and flowers blooming out front. While there were still difficult questions some nights. Why did we have to leave? Will Daddy ever come back? Lily answered honestly, filling the spaces between uncertainty with reminders of safety and love. Their bond, forged in hardship, became their greatest asset. Each weekend, mother and daughter found adventure in ordinary things. Planting marigolds along the picket fence, discovering the best climbing tree in the neighborhood, or curling up under a blanket fort with library books stacked high between them. In their laughter and shared secrets, Lily found not only solace, but joy. Her daughter's resilience inspired her to nurture her own dreams again, rediscovering self-worth. With the final shadows of the court battle receding, Lily dared to look inward at the young woman she once was, the girl with ambitions, the student who set aside her college dreams for marriage and child-rearing. With her daughter now more settled, Lily revisited night classes with renewed purpose, focused now on early childhood education, hoping someday to help children weather difficult transitions as she and her daughter had. Her sense of self-worth, so battered by betrayal and loss, grew stronger with each completed assignment, each supportive word from her professors, and each new skill acquired. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to dream about her own future as well as her child's. Perhaps she could write a children's book or even work for the state's child services someday, helping other women like her find their footing after similar storms. A new chapter in community gradually. Perceptions in Willow Creek began to shift. Where once Lily was the object of gossip, she became, to many, an emblem of perseverance. When a neighbor slipped on her icy porch one winter morning, Lily stopped to help. The older woman, once distant, nodded and thanked her quietly. Later, the neighbor sent over a pie, and conversation followed about children and gardens and finding solace after loss. At church, people gradually came around too. Some offered whispered apologies or confided their own heartaches. Others just nodded in silent solidarity. Lily's presence, once marked by rumor, became a quiet reassurance to others, grappling with unseen struggles. She became known not for what had happened to her, but for how she responded, with honesty, resilience, and willingness to help others rise. The lessons that endure. Looking back, Lily understood that courage wasn't always loud or dramatic. Often it was in the mundane and thankless acts, showing up for work exhausted, patching a backpack instead of buying a new one, offering a kind word to a stranger. She learned that healing is never linear. Setbacks still came, but she weathered them with less fear, aware of the resilience that hardship had carved into her bones. Most importantly, Lily realized she was not alone. Other women, some she barely knew, began reaching out, over email or after community meetings, seeking advice, sharing burdens, asking for guidance, or simply a listening ear. With each story, Lily saw the far-reaching impact of her own fight. She had opened the door for others to believe in their own worth and to insist that justice, however incomplete, was still worth pursuing. The promise of tomorrow. One spring afternoon, as the sun warmed the garden outside her kitchen window, Lily paused in the simple act of trimming roses. Her daughter played nearby, laughter ringing across the yard. That moment, filled with ordinary happiness, felt miraculous. Gone was the constant shadow of loss. In its place stood possibility. Lily knew challenges would return. Financial worries, moments of loneliness, uncertainties about the future. But she also knew, deep down, that she possessed everything she needed: resilience, hope, a loving daughter, and a circle of friends who'd rallied around her darkest hours. It was not the life she had planned, but it was one she had claimed, rebuilt, and now cherished. For Lily, the final measure of her courage was not only in having survived, but in having shaped a safe, hopeful, and joyful world for herself and her child. Proof that every ending could, in the hands of a brave woman, become the start of something shining and new.